Hi everyone, it's Aid from McVeigh Photography, and we are looking at a picture of the Peak District taken on our recent workshop over there. Just thought I'd share a few ideas on what you can do with this sort of shot. First one is, if it looked good on the back of your camera and you were in black and white, as I was actually, if you want to know how to get the same look as you saw in Lightroom, you go to your, close this again, profile here, click on that, and then go to camera matching. And these are the setups you've got in the camera settings. Might be a bit different for different brands. This is for a Canon, and then you click on monochrome, and that's what I got on the back of the camera, which is pretty cool. Now the thing, if you do choose this and go to the black and white panel, that will be disabled because you've already applied the colours. You can do everything else. You just wanted to maybe brighten things up a little bit, take contrast away. Dehaze. You see these very faint clouds here. If you add dehaze, what happens though? They'll start to take shape. So that kind of pulls out detail of hazy bits, as does clarity. So you can see we're starting there to increase the detail. Press the shift key and double click on the black, and then holding the shift key down, double click on the white. So what that does, that will find the brightest pixels and set the white balance, well, the white's level to be that, which is +68 in this instance, and also the darkest pixel, which is -1. And that is now, you've got everything from black to white in that shot. And I think that actually makes quite a nice image. Now, if you prefer to have a matted look, it's easier to show you what that means. What you do is you go to your curves, you grab all of the bottom curve, and you drag it up, and you go to the top curve, and you drag it like that. So what that's done, it means what was black is slightly lighter, and what was white is darker than white. You can see this in the history. You've got these gaps at either end, and those gaps are the same as we've created. So that's how you create a matted look. Okay, now if we go to another one, so probably the same spot, just done a portrait version of it. Now, the next way of doing, try the black and white profiles. So again, go to your profile browser, and then you can hover as you go down. So I'm just literally just moving my mouse over the top of these things, and each one will have a different kind of look. And all it's doing, it's just applying a colour profile. So it's analysing what colours are in the photo and updating what's on the screen. So if you look at that one, that's quite a bright sky. That's quite muted. So if you like your flat look, that's not a bad one to go for. We've got quite a few of these actually. 12. That's quite nothing's pure black there, is it? There we go. And I've got blue filter, green. So as a start point, you pick one of these. I'm not sure. I quite like a bright sky, but the bottom's a bit dark on that one. Keep hovering. Maybe this one. Yeah. Okay. And you can fade the amount. So that's probably just a pure black and white. Actually, I like it when you go quite a long way over. Okay. If you want the darkest pixel to be set to black, double click with the shift key down. So it's gone up a little bit on this. And the same with the white. So I think this will go up. So that's brightened the sky, maybe a bit. So here's what we can do to darken the sky a bit. We get the gradient tool. I'm going to click below where it needs to do that. So everything above this line is being affected, everything below that, which we gradually and darken that bit down a little bit so we get the detail maybe. The reason I've darkened it is so we get detail in these shadowy areas or darker areas. And then I'm going to pull back the brightness, which I liked, with the white slide. As ever with these sliders, it's quite an iterative process. You go backwards and forwards a bit. But you can probably notice it's kind of affect the top of these mountains here. So what we'll do is we can go to the range mask and go to luminance. And what you can do, you can grab luminance range selector, which I prefer this to the sliders below. And then I just want it to affect the sky. So I'm going to just draw a little square. There we go. And it's made no difference at all, really. Well, it has a little bit. So I'm just going to move this slider up. So these mountains aren't that different to the sky by the look of it. So what I might do, I'm going to switch off the luminance tool and move this up to maybe there. Okay, so the pink bit's only really affecting the sky now. Cool. So we'll switch off the overlay, and we've got, and so you can do it the same the other way around. If you want to just brighten things up, it's quite dark at that bottom end, isn't it? So let's double click on the effect. And now if you wanted to brighten the bottom up and increase the shadows a little bit, I think I always like grasses to be nice and sharp. And so sharpness is very fine, textures a bit coarser, and then clarity is the coarsest of the lot, really. But that will now add a lot of texture into this bottom bit, but leave what we want to be soft, the sky in the distance, completely alone. So there you go. And if you wanted to get rid of those cars, you can try using the spot removal tool in Lightroom. That cocked up a little bit there, but no, it's not work. Photoshop's brilliant at that. You can just probably do that in fact, I've probably got Photoshop open. So Control and E, up over to Photoshop. So here we are. Got the photo. I'm going to use my lasso tool to there. And there's a wonderful tool called Control Aware Fill. Kind of a job it's done. There's left a little blemish there. So what you can do with that, I'm going to just create a brand new layer on top of it. Control Alt New, or N for new layer. I'm going to use spot removal tool. That can get rid of that for us. Or if it's not doing a great job, you can use the healing brush, which operates slightly differently. You click Alt and then click on the bit you want to sort of copy. It forces the issue, and you can probably copy that bit. Let's go to there. I'm just going to draw along these. We are quite zoomed in, so when we go out, Control 0, you don't really notice that texture. I mean, you can work on it. And with black and white, if you've got luminosity masking available, you can click on this thing and then select your different areas of the photo to affect them. Let's say you wanted to make the very dark areas. Just do that. Or you can bring them up and lighten them if you add that little bit of gravity into it. Or maybe, let's have a look. Should we make the very brightest a bit darker? So that's that sky there. Okay, that's flattened it out. So I'm going to flatten this to save file size. So layer, flatten image, close, yes to saving, and it goes back to Lightroom. Let's get another one. So a slightly different view. Some nice shapes in the Peak District. So this is all about these lines and layers. So I'm going to pick another one of these buckets, maybe just this one. And the cool thing you can do, go down to effects. This gives this sort of old film vibe to a bit of a vignette if you wanted to. Vignette's just these dark edges. If you want it to be subtle, you put the feather to 100. Nice sort of small midpoint set, and then just a amount. You can go dark if you want. So that's another thing you can do. And also, there's this color grading set. So if you wanted a sepia look, sepia is basically just a very low saturation orange. And you can choose, do you want the dark bits to be sepia or the light bits? So let's go through each one. That's the light bits, and then leaving the dark bits fairly untouched there. If you want to reset, you just press the Alt key. Then we can go try the shadows. So the bottom not quite orange, the top remains fairly neutral, and then we can try it for the midtones. It's probably leaving, yeah, so that's not much, but the midtones. And if you want a bit of everything to have even split it, you can make the shadows kind of blue, midtones orange. So there's all sorts you can do to add to these things, a bit more detail. Remember, you've got all these sliders up here, texture, clarity, and dehaze, pull detail out. If we press the Shift key and double click on the blacks, pick the darkest pixel and make that black, and same with the whites. Obviously, it's not done any favors, so we'll bring it back again, but maybe one a little bit. So that's another idea there. To another one. So that was, I think I've got the interesting views and the earlier shots here, but there was an interesting bit of cloud there. So this is Stone Edge. Click on Auto, and that'll give you a nice bright looking shot. Marker there, zap them if you want to. That sky to dehaze slider over. Notice it's made all these shadows below a bit darker. Let's double click blacks. There we go. So we've got the full range again. I can see we've got a little bit of darkness in these corners. So we can do some lens correction, an automatic thing, but I might even do a bit of a. So I've got this slope coming down to ping there. That rock kind of sits on the third. Cool. Oh, and try some of the other color profiles. You've got all your camera landscape, which tends to be a bit color. Portrait, which I never use. Standard. I'm not really known between neutral's a bit flatter. Faithful. Strange names, but there you go. Or you do have these real creative or artistic set. So on this day, we didn't have a lot of colour going on. So if you wanted to add a bit, this slider here, the artistic, remember, you add a little tiny bit like that, or you can go mad, maybe somewhere like, you get a nice, how about one of these? So these are the famous millstones. Again, it's a nice soft light, but there's not a lot of colour there. So if you wanted to just add a bit of magic, I think artistic gives it a sort of oldie worldy feel. I'm almost tempted to pull back the side quite a bit like that. So do we want to make more detail? We're probably going to make these millstones stand out a little bit. So what we could do is get a brush, double click the effect, and that gets rid of all the settings. It just zeroes everything. And we might imagine we want to just add texture, clarity, sharpness wherever we brush. So essentially it's going to draw the item. So I'm going to just draw those three things with my brush. My brush is on 100. I'm going to lower it a little, 65, say. It's drawing over these rocks. And what it's doing, it's not doing anything other than adding it might be switch it off, back on. So it's a subtle thing. And I think with a shot like this, it's what you press the space bar, you can move your screen around by just dragging it. And we'll just do this last bit here. And then if we go back fit to normally, we'd probably say, maybe adding a little bit of clarity. As I said, normally we add lots of clarity and dehaze. And this pastel effect's really pleasing and go down. We don't need to sharpen because we sharpen the base ISO 100. Any noise reduction. I'm just going to do a bit of lens correction. It's a very wide lens. It might be a little bit, and I think it looks very bright. I'm just going to do what I often do with a big 100 on the feather, small midpoint, and then he slides in a. Yeah, I think that works. Cool. So there's a few tips on how to edit stuff from the workshop in the Peak District, which we'll hopefully be repeating soon.